Time for what?
Time for what?
Experience in college.
Time for reinforcement.
Time for liftoff!
Where nothing is impossible unless you think it is impossible.
College.
I have my college scholarship.
Yes. Boom.
College ran by real fast.
You hung in with the best college.
First time for everything.
Well, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Let's do this thing.
Genius, let's do this thing!
Thriving and making history. I have had a fortunate opportunity to, get many years of experts out in the field who worked at the colleges, who work with high school students, how to encourage them to get into college. But wait a minute, we need to hear from the actual audience themselves, a student who's going through this process. Everyone, please welcome Mia. Welcome Mia to the show.
Hi.
So Mia, please let our listeners know a little bit about yourself and why are you doing a podcast explaining to them how this college process impacts you as a student who will be a rising senior who is college bound.
Well, I'm a junior. I play sports. I try to stay as involved in school as possible. I want to go into biochemistry, and I'm doing this podcast, to help others, and this is my journey, and so I'd like to share it with everyone else.
Thank you, Mia. We are really lucky, and I'm very fortunate to also not only have you as a guest, but also working with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You were a sophomore during a pandemic that has not happened for almost 100 years. I think 100 years. Don't quote me, historians. And now you're back in the non-virtual world, right? Where you're in person. How has that been as a student and then as a junior? Because now it's action time, it's college time. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so far the transition's been okay. It's kind of hard to get back into the groove of being in-person school. But college-wise, it kind of just sprung up we've been doing workshops or whatever, but it's hard to actually be oh yeah, I actually have to do this now in person instead of on Zoom.
Now that's a really interesting point because I notice, I always say this with pride, been doing this for over 26 years now. And what I've noticed for a lot of students, there's a hiccup of, I got to get my ball rolling, right? It sounds like, everyone has been disabled in one way or the other. And they're it's hard to get to exercise, to do things. How have you motivated yourself? And what have you observed from other students? Because there's no right or wrong. I think we're all trying to figure this out.
Yeah. My motivation is honestly my drive to hopefully get into a good college and maybe get away from California in general. So that's my drive. My friends are kind of the same way. So, I don't know how most other people are feeling right now, but I know my friends are kind of on the same train as me. But I know some people who are kind of stuck in the middle, not knowing where to go from their position. So, kind of just depends.
No, you're right. It's very individualized through this process. For the class of 2020, when they were getting ready to college, they're like, what is this? It was very shocking for them. The class of 21, a lot of them bandwagon on this great test optional or test free, where colleges didn't require taking tests. So you have classmates from your high school who've got into Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins, Swarthmore, many great schools, USC, with no test scores. And then what's happening now with your class of 22, which is the class above you, the colleges are okay, we'll do test optional again. And that brought some easement for a lot of students. But then there's this big question, which I feel like the colleges are like your class of the class of 23. Well, we know what we're going to do. Just give everyone a history lesson again. Before the pandemic, schools like the UCs, the University of Chicago already decided to go test optional, meaning you can take the test or not, and they'll decide based on what you do. You won't get penalized not taking the test. But if you have low test scores, they will penalize you, right? Because, it's a negative review. And then test free, if you have a perfect test score, the UCs won't use it for admissions, right? That's not a factor. So there's that bunch, right, who, like you said, hey, we're determined, it's hard to get started, but we're going to continue this process and monitor, right, go to college. And these colleges we're going to want all these great students with the test or not. And then there's there's these other colleges who remain nameless, but you know who you are, who are like, I don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, so for the class of 23, for the juniors, so we're doing this podcast fall of your junior year. There have been some heavy hitters who have not decided, right?
Yeah.
So let's get your opinion first, and we'll have some follow-up questions. So you probably don't know this. So let's talk about some heavy hitter schools. And you know, and these schools are probably, you may or may not be interested in. But Stanford has not decided for the class of 23 if they're going to be test optional or not, even though they have been 2 years, and they're monitoring their current kids on that who are enrolled. And then Cornell University, once again, being the leader out of the Ivies, said we're going to be test optional to the class of 24 and hopefully be permanent in that directions. So what are your thoughts of these huge, big institutions, one being like, not sure what to do, right? And not communicating that. And some like, heck yeah, let's keep on this gravy train because it's working for everybody. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I feel like our class 23, is kind of like in a limbo situation where like some are just like me, I'm taking it just in case, just in case the schools suddenly change because they're not really giving a direction right now. Just in case they change, then I will have a test score. And if they're going test optional and I get a bad score, I can just not submit it. But I mean, I think it's cool that they're going test optional. Not many people are like great, amazing testers. So it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. But I think it's cool. I mean, happy that I have the decision whether or not to submit my test score. And I'm happy that other people have that decision as well.
You know, you're not alone in that process. There's an old podcast before all this stuff called The Art of Thinking. It was a documentary about testing. And, you know, I hear often a lot of people say, oh, I had a student come in like, oh, I'm not a good tester. And I'm like, no. It's not, you're not a good tester. The test is not good. And some people be like, what are you saying, lady? And what I'm saying is based on research. If you look at the history of when standardized test was brought in, it was literally a gatekeeper, and it was designed, you know, to be that gatekeeper. And the equity issue is not there. There's 20 years of data that's done that. Even professors at Stanford have done that. I've met with them, talked to them. And that's why I've made it very clear and open. I'm professionally not for the test. Also, as a parent, I've seen people, you tell me if I'm wrong. I remember I had one kid who was, quote unquote, good tester. I'm like, ooh, more money for scholarships, you know? And I'm like, why don't you just do that Khan Academy test prep thing that, you know, College Board does. And I observed that beautiful child of mine for 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, that's because I do know that my 20, 30-year-old students now, there's no benefit personally or professionally. Their enrichment programs, leadership roles, right? Even being an athlete like yourself was a benefit. So what are your thoughts? Because you're playing at CYA, right? You're covering your bases. I know that some people say, wait, that's CYB. Well, you know what the A is. So what do you think about that for your time, right? Because because when you're saying you're taking the test, you're going to take the PSAT test and wait to hear, because hopefully spring of your junior colleges will firm up that answer, which what's a lot of them said. Some of you colleges need to do it before the beginning of summer. Some of them have told me that. So what are your thoughts? Because you're playing it safe, because some colleges are undecided because they need to get data for their bosses, but you're going to take some precious time away from you. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, my father kind of convinced me to take it. So, I mean, he kind of made me a little scared, not gonna lie. But I guess I feel like it's a safety plan that, I mean, I'm not really deciding whether or not it's test optional. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm covering my butt a lot, and it is a lot of precious time, but I'm just hoping that maybe they'll figure it out before I plan to take it in the summer. We'll just go from there, but limbo, as I said, very limbo right now.
So because we may have a board member who works at the college, right? A lot of times those board of regents make these decisions, or a college rep. Can you tell colleges, if you were not doing the standardized testing or the test prep, what would you be doing instead?
Oh, I have a club right now that's kind of also in limbo about what we're going on, because we have a senior who's running it, who's also in the same position, going into colleges right now and doing that things. So I'd probably be helping him a lot, trying to get our club off the ground a little more. or maybe helping with my tutoring for our middle school, because that's taking up a lot of my time right now. So if I can do that in the spring instead of worrying about standardized testing, it would be a lot more fun.
And a lot less stressful too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why I appreciate you responding to that, I talked to a college rep and they just said, this is pretty much laissez-faire, like, yeah, no big deal. Like, we'll let them know spring of their junior year. And and there was a pause for me. And I'm like, you do realize how stressed out these kids are, including, correct me if I'm wrong, sophomores.
Oh, yes. Sophomores are very stressed. I have some
They're
sophomores.
freaking out. I want them to take it. You rarely say this, people, really take a chill pill because because the ones I worry about the most is you guys, right? Because, what happens is, and what a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to give you a website. Everyone should be following a website called fairtest.org. Fair, F-A-I-R, and then just like the word test.org. They have for years been advocating you need to go test prep. I went to a conference with colleges across the world, to be honest, and saying doing petition, let's go to this test optional, because of the equity issue that's out there, right? Let students focus on their talents so that they can grow and be so much better. And I think once colleges get their bosses in line, here's the data, right? Like what's happening, the kids at Stanford who in test optional, they're doing surveys and Stanford is looking to see, my source is actually from a student who's going there, who's test optional. So people at Stanford say, well, how do you know this? That's why connecting with our alums is so amazing, that because they were trying are they being successful, right? For some schools. And University of Chicago, who was test optional way beforehand, we know they will. And they are, right? So common sense needs to play on all this on there. And I understand, like you were saying, parents out there, do you better just take the test? It's because what were your thoughts? Because I have, let's pretend there's a school you're interested in. I'm going to give you a real life situation that a senior's dealing with right now. The school we're talking about is Fisk University. We have our alums from SI who go there. It's a historical black college and university. And they went test optional for admissions to get in, but not test optional for scholarship money, which is merit-based. GPA test scores. So the student says, oh, no, I'm not taking the test. And they were like, wait, they need a test? They kind of yes, kind of don't. And just to let everyone know, that's a unique situation. Most colleges will go test optional, not all, will be test optional for scholarship merit. Again, that's not all. So what are your thoughts when you hear a situation like that may happen on one of your colleges next year?
I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. Just have scholarship based on how well you do on a test that's proven not to be available and readily good for everybody just seems kind of unfair. Not kind of, seems very unfair in general. For the PSAT, I know my dad's you have to do well because you can get scholarship opportunities. But it's just tests not the greatest way to determine who or what needs money for college.
No, I often more and more, and I even talk to some students who are 26 now, and I say, I feel really testing is like you're going on, Match.com or Tinder or Hinge, right? Where you're going on this dating game. And who, and really does those tests on eHarmony, right, really match you up with the best partner. It's really when you go and engage, we do things together. You hear about, I do the club that you want to spend time doing, or going back to your middle school, giving back, right? That is something that's so important. So let's just pretend there's College X, no name associated. They said you can, I'm going to put you on the hot spot. You can be test optional, but the merit scholarship, usually when a test is required, they're looking for the super high score. And do know for everyone else, a lot of colleges are more looking at merit scholarship based on leadership, community, who you are. So which is nice, but there are some. So what would you do? Would you still apply to that school and then not go for the merit and just work for outside scholarships? Or would you take the test and just deal with it for both? Or would you you know what? I'm not going to apply to that. And remember, you're not in love. It's just College X. It was a school on your list. What would you do if you know right now for sure that's an option for one of your campuses?
I guess if it was my dream school, I'd still go for it. I guess it depends on likeliness of me getting in or not either way. So, I would probably still take it just because that's how I feel. If I can get that scholarship, then I'm going to try my hardest to get that scholarship. But it is dependent.
And the sad part of that story is, right? Like then all those middle schoolers and these other people from your other program don't get the chance to have more time with the one and only Mia. That's the one thing that's really